Joining us in his usual Monday spot is the host of Green Light Podcast, the Green Light Podcast where all can be acquired. Two-time Super Bowl champion, our friend of the program on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line, Chris Long. How you doing, Christopher?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, well, I guess we're both better than Matt Rhule right now, although 4 years of dead money being paid to you.
I would like that.
You know,
I mean, like, that's a silver lining for my guy.
So what do you think went wrong in Carolina? Your best guess?
Well, I mean, they just didn't. I mean, they've been playing quarterback carousel, and none of them hit. And, like, you know, this was a Hail Mary from Matt Rhule, and it just didn't work out. It hasn't worked out, and for a guy who can probably hang his hat on the offensive side of the ball, they just haven't. They're a defensive football team, you know, and that's why I think the interesting conversation is going to be what kind of head coach do you bring in? You know, what's on David Tepper's mind? I mean, I know people make a lot of the Sean Payton waiting for the Dallas job, but, like, you know, and Jerry might still have ideas, but McCarthy's coaching those guys up pretty good. And, you know, is Carolina an attractive job for people? Is David Tepper the kind of owner that you're excited about working for? I would think so. I mean, what happens in the NFC South when Brady retires? You know, so I don't know. You're going to have a high pick. There's a lot of quarterbacks next year. I love D'Amico Ryans. I love what San Francisco's defense is about. I think culture building is awesome. I think guys like Ben Johnson in Detroit, although if you're Ben Johnson and you're like, oh, Tepper might get fired today, let me have a good day out here in Foxborough, and you get blanked, you're like, damn, that's a bad impression to leave. There's a lot of guys that could nab this job, and I don't know which direction they go. I think that the interesting question is, you're going to have a young quarterback. Do you want a defensive head coach? Because if you have a really good young quarterback, you can make one of these young OCs a king by just playing well, and then that guy's going to get a head coach job in the next couple of years. So that's my biggest concern when you hire a defensive head coach with a young quarterback, because it almost guarantees that if things go well, you're going to have to retool from a schematic standpoint offensively within the first couple of years.
What do you think?
Otherwise, I don't care. Like, you know, just build a culture, win.
What do you think is going through Baker Mayfield's mind right now?
Oh, man, it sucks, man. You know, like, I feel for the guy on one hand, like, sometimes he hasn't helped himself, definitely not on the field, but, like, you know, some of the things he said at times, he's had a lot thrown at him in the first couple of years, but that's the NFL, man. There's a ton of draft picks that get dropped in inopportune situations, and oftentimes the higher you get picked, the more chaotic it is. And then to end up in Carolina in kind of an even worse situation than where you came from and expect to go well, you know, it feels like the end of the road. And the problem is, like, with Baker, he's so variable that, like, if he's not going to be a starter in the NFL anymore, like, do you feel like he's your Brian Hoyer? You know, he's got that starter mentality, and it's going to be hard to make that transition if this is the end of the road for him.
Well, you mentioned Sean Payton's name, and clearly David Tepper now is, you know, going to be all over him. I mean, I'd imagine the wooing process begins, and when that happens, you know, trigger fingers get itchier in other places too. And I've heard Payton's name associated with Denver as well, and not because they're ready to just out Nathaniel Hackett, but the way the first 5 weeks have gone, and play calling, and Russell, you know, being in an offense that's a timing offense and things of that nature. And I think you were the one who pointed out he's so off schedule. So what do you think of that scenario? We haven't spoken since that stinkerama that kicked off week 5.
Well, it's potentially, and by the way, Rich, I was really entertained by the game, not by the football, but by the fact that, like, we all watched it.
Yes.
You know, like, isn't it amazing that Roger Goodell found the floor? Like, he was like, we'll see. Like, how bad can a game be and everybody still watch? What's the retention rate on this game? Because I know some Denver fans left, but if you watch 60 of that game, you're going to watch 70. You know, like, and we really found out how much we love football. I really believe, Rich, if we want to solve something as a country, we should convince people it's under the guise of, like, football being existentially threatened, and we can do anything as a nation together because people love that game, dude. Like, we watched that game for 70 minutes. So, yeah, I guess to say the Broncos look awful, I don't know that there's like a light at the end of the tunnel for them. I didn't pick the Broncos to go to the playoffs. I didn't know it would be this bad. I also think you could see the decline a little bit with Russ. Like, I'm not saying he can't pull himself out of this thing, but that Russ magic hasn't been there. The magic oftentimes, when he'd go to the well to get that big off-schedule play in Seattle for so many years, like, that's dried up the last couple of years. And they haven't run his stuff in Denver. And, I think of Sean Payton. He said something really interesting about Russell Wilson. I heard him say last week. He said, I don't know why Nathaniel Hackett doesn't sit down with him for an extended period of time and ask him, what do you like? Like, what can we run that's going to suit your skill set? What concepts did you like in Seattle? And I don't want to assume he hasn't done that, but it's interesting that was Sean's thought process, and we're here talking about Nathaniel Hackett already, but Sean Payton with anybody is exciting. Like, I had Sean Payton on my pod. Mm-hmm. He was driving across Louisiana, and he went for an hour, 50 minutes, and we talked football the whole time. That guy's football mind is, like, incredible. I mean, situational football, offensive football, the stories that he's able to draw from, the anecdotes. Like, I would, like, if I have a favorite quarterback, there's barely anybody I'd rather have paired with that quarterback than Sean Payton. I mean, whoever nabs him is going to be pretty lucky, and maybe it is somebody you don't expect.
Sean Payton is a fascinating subject matter for sure. Chris Long here on the Rich Eisen Show, and while we're on the subject of Sean Payton and how he just seems to have more often than not the right button to push throughout his entire career, when to push it, when not. And that has been an issue, obviously, with Nathaniel Hackett and Denver, to the point where they get a coach upstairs to help him with that process. And then you see what's going on with all the analytics. We discussed last week about John Harbaugh's decision to go for it and on 4th and goal, and it didn't work out. And then you saw what Brandon Staley did yesterday, where he goes for it right at midfield with a minute to go instead of punting up 3, and it almost cost him. Keenan Allen even tweeted out when he was not playing, WTF are we doing? And so how do you think that sits in a locker room?
Well, I think
Chris?
I think he meant to type WFT. He forgot that they're now the Commanders. Maybe he was watching.
Could have been
Carson with the ball in his hands 3 times. So I want to give him an out here, Rich. Okay. But no, honestly, dude, I was really concerned about that. Not just the call. I hate the call. And I hate the call in context. And I got nothing against Brandon Staley. My brother played for him and says he's awesome. Yep. Like, I think he seems like a good guy and a good coach. But I know guys have, like, their mantra and their stuff and, like, their identity. But when you get so concerned with who you are and not what you need to do in the moment, you get lost, right? Like, this is the moment that's been presented. I know that analytics, which are split, by the way, Next Gen Stats says, punt. The 4th down decision bot is on drugs. They say, go for it. Analytics are great, but pair it with the context. Who are you punting the ball to? How many timeouts do they have left? You're punting the ball to Jacoby Brissett, who, is a good player, but if your defense can't hold him down 70 yards, whatever it would be, no timeouts, rushers, a rusher like Khalil Mack, a defense like you have, if you can't do that, you don't deserve to win the game anyways. And when you get so caught up in trying to be who you are, or who you think you are, and you don't try to win the football game for your guys, you get tweets like that. And, like, it's a bad sign. I kind of went as far as saying canary in the coal mine a little bit with Keenan's tweet, but, like, he's a dude. He's their dude. And I'm sure he'll tell you we're good. Like, everything's fine. I just was blah, blah, blah. But I just feel like that's not a good sign. And that guy last year cost them a chance to go to the playoffs. Like, playoff checks, a playoff appearance, because he was obsessed with doing it the way he thinks they're supposed to be, and not doing the thing in the moment that's going to advance the ball for his team. And I just get a little irritated by that, because if I'm a player, I'm kind of pissed about that.
The fact that he felt compelled to hit send right? I mean, that's his coach. We were all second guessing. The whole country was second guessing. I mean, and Cleveland had the game winner on the foot of a kid who actually, creased the uprights earlier this year with no time left in one of the wins for Cleveland. They're lucky. I mean, they are really lucky.
Yes, they are. They're really lucky. In Cleveland, we thought, man, it'd be pretty scary if they were, for a few reasons, if they were in it when Deshaun Watson gets back, right? Like, because they're pretty good. And the first couple games of the season, the first 6, I believe, were among the easiest in the league. They've dropped close games. The spectacular loss to your Jets, by the way, are cooking. Shout out to Joe Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta lost a close ball game there. Had chances to win that ball game, and then the way they lost, they lost that ball game yesterday. So you come out of that 5-game stretch 2-3, and now you've got New England, who's rounding into form a little bit. Whatever that form looks like, they're rounding into it. Baltimore, Cincy, Miami, Buffalo, Tampa. So it's a bad missed opportunity by the Browns, and the Chargers are lucky.
Chris Long here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, we've reached the sports talk radio portion of our conversation. You can only put your marker on 1, 3, and 2 team, the Bays, Tampa, Green. Which one do you take? Tampa Bay, Green Bay? Which one?
Green Bay.
You didn't stutter?
I do. And that's dumb. I feel dumb saying it, but I just don't like the Bucs have to win. There's way more upside in Green Bay. Like, that offense can turn into the right thing. I still think they can make a trade. I think Dobbs can come along even more. I think they can do things differently offensively. I think Aaron, as bad as it's been around him at times, like some of the things that he's had to deal with early in the year, like you get Watson dropping that ball against the Vikings, you get Dobbs with a fumble in a key spot early in the game against the Pats, you get all types of young mistakes. I think the Packers, with Aaron Rodgers and a few of the weapons they have more of an upside. And that defense didn't have a great day yesterday. But I said this on our show, like, the Giants, man, a year ago, and this shows you how far the Giants have come, we would have made this game. Do you know how big of a story the Giants have to be to not make that game all about the Packers yesterday? Like, we're talking about the Giants.
Yeah.
We're not shocked. We're kind of not shocked. They were catching almost 10 points in London. But we're kind of not shocked because they play good football. So, Daboll, man, I liken the Giants to they're like a mini Titans team, man. Like the Titans, athletic quarterback who's probably not going to win you games outright. You've got a scrappy group. You're good up front. You got a generational back and a New England tree coach who doesn't act like Bill. And so, there's a lot of similarities in those two programs. And the Titans have done a lot of great things over the last couple of years. I think it's going to be interesting to see Daniel Jones, who went from 1.8 turnovers a game down to I think 1 his second year, down to 0.9 to 0.6 a game now this year. Can he just be that Ryan Tannehill for them? And somebody asked me yesterday, are they for real? And I said, define real, because that's the worst question in the world. Define the parameters of what we're talking about. Can they win a playoff game? Yeah. They just beat the Packers. They're solid. So Packers have a higher ceiling than the Bucs. That defense is going to keep the Bucs in it. They'll be a playoff team, but I think the Packers have a little bit higher ceiling.
Yeah, I said earlier in this program, Chris Long, that's a game the Giants lose by 20 last year, not win by 5. I mean, they would have just folded the tent down 10, and that would have been the end of that, or they wouldn't have had the ability to get Saquon finding that different level. Then you got the Cowboys at 4-1. Let's talk a little bit about that game before I ask you one more sports talk radio question. The Cowboys look terrific. Their quarterback doesn't make any mistakes, and Micah Parsons, he was playing on half a wheel and still getting into that backfield yesterday. Right?
We're so lucky to see Aaron Donald and Micah Parsons playing football in the same field. Those two guys are so awesome. AD lining up at end and 2 sacks on a pretty good rookie, and just watching the way he competes. And then Micah, he's out there on a bum wheel, all over the field. Micah Parsons would pick 12. How many games has he won that team? I'm not saying with one play or you can point directly to him, but he changes the way everybody operates offensively. Like, he is truly that guy that you're like, where is this guy? We got to have a GPS tracker on him. Like, he could be anywhere on the field. They move him around. And his play has directly contributed to them being able to weather this storm without Dak. They got points on special teams, right? They're just doing all the little things. And for LA, man, I just don't know, man. I said this last year. Last year I gave up on the Rams. It was a primetime game, and Stafford was just getting beat to a pulp.
These 49ers. It's him versus the 49ers or the Titans. They went through like a 3-game stretch where they were getting out-physicaled, and that's happened to them against the Bills. That happened against the Niners, and that happened yesterday. And you know, that is my sports talk radio question, because I am genuinely concerned about the lineup front. Sean McVay said as much publicly, and he's always Mr. Sunshiny. We'll work on this. I got to coach better. That's the sort of thing he says. And so you got 3, 2, and 3 teams, and I know this might be a disrespectful question to ask when it involves one of the best receivers in the game and coaches and a defending champ. If you had to choose a 2 and 3 team to bet on or to place your marker on in the West, would it still be the Rams, or would you take Geno cooking, or would you take the Cardinals who are about to get Hopkins back?
Well, I'll just say this, and this isn't a cop-out. I don't think any of those teams are contenders. Like the Rams have an opportunity to morph into a contender, but I don't see the bones of like a contending team. And if you think about when Sean McVay, and people the first 2 weeks were taking victory laps, got picked the Niners to go far and win the West. But like now you see cream rises to the top. They got a great roster. Matt Stafford is effectively a Detroit Lion again, dude. And I'm not talking about one of these like really bad Lions teams. I mean like where you got no run game, you got one great target. Obviously, Cup's not Megatron, but like you're having trouble running the football and you're taking a beating. And he's older. He's just not like physically what he was. And I think the biggest thing is when Sean McVay and that group was rolling, they had Todd Gurley, and Todd Gurley got a lot of credit, did not get enough credit. He made them go. The play action game made them go. They had offensive linemen who could fit up in the run game. They could get you moving side to side. They had good guards. They had good tackles, and they worked in concert. And you could get the big chunk plays off play action. Everything came off of with Jared Goff, that stuff. And Matt Stafford, as good as he is, you need a run game. And, I was watching my dad a little bit yesterday on NFL Fox, and, dude with a flat top yelling at the TV to sign a fullback, like, sounds kind of old school, but it's true. Pops is right. Like, they need to run the football. And as hard as that is for, one of these boy wonder coaches that's grown up and become a champion to probably hear, it's like, you ain't going anywhere if you don't have a run game. And, if they want to lean into an identity, it would be running the rock and playing defense. The Von Miller loss was huge, but you got what you got now. And I'm not buying any of those teams. I'm really not. The only team in the NFC West I'm buying is the Niners.
Chris Long here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, before I let you go, one last question. What'd you think of the Grady Jarrett roughing the passer call? I think these should be reviewed from now on. This is. I mean, it cost the Falcons an opportunity to win the game, and it's absurd. I mean, Jerome Boger said afterwards that he saw somebody take a quarterback unnecessarily to the ground. I mean, come on. I mean, this is absurd.
What do we do? Like, how many plays in NFL history were a quarterback evading that exact kind of tackle? Like, we don't have the David Tyree. Like, that's what can happen. You can't just say, I got to take him to the ground easier, give him a chance to get rid of that football. Like, all types of things happen if you can't get the guy to the ground. And I remember early in my career getting flagged and fined for high hits. Like, that's fine. Okay, like, I get that. We're protecting people's heads. Then you couldn't go low. Okay, I guess I get that because, like, the product on the field sucks if Tom Brady's gimping around. And he got hurt. He tore his ACL one year. Like, you see what happens. Nobody, Matt Castle's great, but you'd rather see Brady. Like, the product is better. Okay, now we have a strike zone, which is hard to hit. It's really hard to sack quarterbacks in the NFL, even on athletic ones. You hit the strike zone, you drive in the ground form tackle, that's a penalty. So now I can't roll him in. I called it the sideways prom pose. Like, it's literally Grady Jarrett is like spooning him and bringing him to the ground gently. That's the that's the gentlest Grady Jarrett can be. Like, and he still gets flagged. And so as a rusher, I hate when people say, like, it's like football is turning into a pillow fight. Trust me, it's not.
That's right.
It's still very violent. It's probably the collisions are the most violent they've ever been. We just litigate it differently. This is turning into a pillow fight. Like, it really is. And I know it's reactive to the Tua deal. It's the same type of thing. But 45-year-old man didn't get hurt yesterday. Grady has got to be really upset. And Brady, here's to add insult to injury, Brady tried to kick him off him. Like, everybody saw that. Let's not pretend we didn't see that. It's my guy. He's one of my old teammates. I think he's a great dude. He's a competitor. Grady rolls him, and Brady's pissed and tries to kick him off him. Like, call it what it is. And that's the penalty. But Grady Jarrett gets a penalty. And so I just don't, I don't know where we're going to go. But maybe it's one of these things that Boger's going to get read the riot act behind the scenes, and we don't have this anymore. And quietly, they mea culpa, and we don't have these calls the rest of the year.
Chris Long, you are the man, as always, for giving your opinions. Who's on the Green Light Pod? What do you want to tell everyone about how what you're doing this week and
Man,
more?
That's a great question. Matt, who do we have on tomorrow? Do you know? Oh, David Babora. Remember Mr. Irrelevant?
Of course.
From same year as me in St. Louis, and just one of the most interesting dudes ever. Has a great veteran gym down in Texas, and has done a lot of great work. We've climbed Kilimanjaro together. He's done ayahuasca, so we can talk some Rodgers. We did talk ayahuasca. It's a fun interview, so that'll be out tomorrow or Wednesday, and our normal stuff the rest of the week.
Okay, so you can manifest together tomorrow. You can manifest positivity on the Green Light.
We love manifesting positivity.
Why not? That'd be great. Well, write that down.
Manifest a run game in L.A., man.
Okay. Well, I mean, they need to manifest Whitworth, to be honest.
Yeah, Whitworth. Hey, if I'm Whitworth, man, I'm happy where I am, dude. As hard as it was to be up till 12:30 in the morning talking about Indy, Denver on the field the other night, like, I'm good. I'm not going back there and helping Matt Stafford up all year.
Chris Long, you're the man. Always appreciate it. We'll chat next week. You're the best.
Thanks, Rich.
At Joel9, number 91 on Twitter, Green Light Podcast. Check it out. Where all podcasts are required.